Good afternoon, my name is Kenyon Daniel, and I'm here to present a few thoughts and ideas and things I considered while transitioning a live, albeit flipped course to an online course. So I'm hoping to provide some inspiration or some new directions that anyone could consider and maybe hopefully dispel some memes or ideas that really aren't true about doing online courses. Now first, when you're thinking about working with an online course, it really is important to consider some initial ideas, some initial concepts that are going to be necessary for the creation of the course. For example, what are the students expecting in a course? What do they want from a course? While of course we want to provide the information and the assessments and the rigor, they're also expecting a pretty high degree of interaction and an opportunity to work with the professor as well as with each other. And so we want to make sure there are ways within the course structure to do that. I have done fully sort of automated online courses, and they have some pretty significant disadvantages. For example, it often leads to a very strong disconnect between the students and the professor, whereas a more sort of traditional course that is structured to be online retains those interactions, or can. You also want to consider how your course currently proceeds. What is the normal format? Is it live lecture with Q&A? Is it some sort of hybrid flipped classroom? Is it a fully flipped classroom? And if so, you're going to want to consider how to mirror that in an online setting. So this way the course isn't jarring to you as a professor. It's a natural just evolution of what you do normally. You also want to make note of what tools are available and what tools you would need access to. For example, do you have some sort of recording software for making videos or lecture videos if you want to? Are you practiced with something such as Camtasia, which is available from USF as video editing software if you want to do that? And perhaps very, very importantly, what are the crucial interactive aspects to your course, and can those be expanded upon? Remember, students are going to expect a very high level of interactivity, in my experience. So you want to make sure your online course maintains that, because after all, that is the only chance you will have to directly connect with your students and guide them appropriately. And lastly, how are assessments going to be formed? Will you use the lockdown browser? Will you use some sort of webcam monitoring? These will need to be decided very early on and spelled out extremely clearly within the syllabus of the course. I would go as far as to make announcements about it. I would go as far as put in syllabus of course, and to provide demo assignments where all those tools are put into place. If you're going to require the Respondus Lockdown browser, for example, make a quiz or an assignment that uses it. If you're going to use webcam monitoring, make an assignment that's no stakes so that students get used to doing that. In other words, anything sort of unusual, provide an opportunity for the students to do with no stakes to their grade before they're finally thrust into an exam situation or something similar, where these tools will be used and where the stakes do matter. So what are the advantages to doing? You actually have a lot more teaching opportunities available. It's kind of a misbelief to think that the only time we can teach is within our literal class time, our 1 hour and 15 minutes or however long it is, where we meet face to face with students. That's simply not true. And online we can already do more than that with email or discussion forums or online live sessions. We can even set up Microsoft Teams systems that can be maintained, and students can communicate with you in real time or via email through Microsoft Teams. So in other words, you actually have more opportunity to come into contact with your students than might seem to be with a standard face-to-face discussion, although the only aspect you really have to move is that face-to-face time. Everything else is already there. I've also found that in dealing with students online or in chat, like situations where they're typing in responses or answers, students can be more extroverted than they would in a face-to-face session. In other words, I get more student questions during an online chat than I ever do in face-to-face situations. Plus, with one of the big tricks I'm going to show, the breakout room, students will gather into groups and become very active within their group, which is pretty interesting as well. In other words, we get more student interaction, student to student, and student to professor. Third, there is no literal time limit to your lectures. You have the internet available to you, and these lectures can be posted to YouTube as unlisted so that only your students will have access to them. YouTube will also put in closed captioning and make transcripts on demand. And again, there's no literal time limit. If you're lecturing in a face-to-face environment, you have roughly that hour and 15 minutes with time lost to other activities. Well, if you want to record your lectures, they can be as long as you want, broken up however you want. You can really delve into minutia and details and examples because you're not going to run out of time. Now, if you're going to use your class meeting times for live lecture, that's still that hour 15 or whatever, but you also can post supplementary lectures that can go into certain topics in more detail. In other words, that time limit's basically gone. Now, granted, we could do this for face-to-face courses too, and that's what makes this great. The actual transition to online doesn't really involve dramatic changes. It does involve learning some new tools if you're not used to them, but overall the methodologies can still be the same. Next, it's pretty easy to record material and course discussions, and I use Canvas conferences for this, because it'll record webcam, it will record document cam, it'll record the chat. It also has an area available for common notes if students want to work together to create a notes page, which is really cool, by the way. And your courses can take on additional aspects, maybe more interactive challenge sessions, which is one of my favorite things to do. In other words, the course really opens up to do whatever you want it to do. However, as might be expected, there are some disadvantages we need to look out for, in particular time to create the lectures, and a little bit of a trap about thinking your recordings and your presentations and everything have to be professional or have to be perfect. I kind of stand by the idea, when I do a live lecture, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to stumble, I'm going to say things wrong. It's going to happen, so I don't worry about it. I just deliver my lecture as I normally would, and I record that. If there's an error in it, fine. I post a correction. If I stumble with some words, fine. I don't worry about it, because in the real setting, in the face-to-face setting, we couldn't worry about it. You would just do what you do. So my specific approaches are to record lectures in advance. So I've recorded every lecture for a class and tuned them to what I want to discuss within the lecture. I will create challenges and activities for class meetings so that instead of delivering the lecture during my formal class meeting, students are going to work on effectively homework, but they're going to be working on homework with me present and or with TAs present. And I use the breakout rooms. Now, this was something I just discovered in spring of 2020, the idea of the breakout room, and I'm going to show how it's used. It allows the students to break out into smaller groups and work with each other, and perhaps with the TA or the professor kind of jumping around from room to room and monitoring everything. But I do find that when students start working with each other, they become in chat, they become far more engaged and far more active. And that's what I use the TAs and students to do, is to guide and challenge each other. So the TAs may provide a challenge to the students to solve as a group. I've even called on students and said, hey, what do you think? What challenge would you offer the group in a metabolism type question or something? In essence, I replicate my actual classroom in an online setting. So what I would do in a face-to-face system, I do in an online system with the additional tools of things like breakout rooms and like chats that allow students to kind of come out of their shells and be more engaged. So I want to provide a specific example of the breakout room. So this is Canvas. All right, so we recognize the menu here, and here's the Canvas conference. I'm highlighting it over here on the left, and this is what I use extensively. Now you'd go to conferences and you'd select new conference, and that's going to open up an edit window where you can edit everything. In fact, let's show that. So new conference, I can give it whatever name I want. I usually disable time limits, so otherwise you can set the time limit. I usually just disable it, and you may want to record recording. So I always record the challenge sessions, and you can invite course members, including observers, or remove observers. And you can provide descriptions. It's very nice to set up. Then when you start the conference, you'll come to this main screen, and there's a lot of things you can do from here. So for example, you can start the recording at any time. You can also pause and restart the recording, which I usually do during breakout sessions. So when students are just kind of on their own for 10 to 15 minutes, I will stop recording so as to not have 15 minutes of silence in the recording. You'll have a users list, so this you can see which students are showing up, which students can hear you. You can mute students as necessary. Down here's where you would activate audio with this symbol, activate your webcam if you want with this symbol, share your screen with this symbol. This button I'll go over in a moment, which allows you to upload presentations and do instant polling. Shared notes comes under this cog right here, which if we bring this in, we can lock viewers or unlock viewers. So you would go into lock viewers and unlock the shared notes so that students can work on a common note page together, which is really interesting to watch when they start doing that. But I really want to drive home this idea of the breakout room. The breakout room is great, and so what you do when you click on that, you come to this screen. You can set how many rooms you want. I usually do basically a room per 20 students, and how long you want the students to be able to work on whatever it is you want them to do. Then allow students to choose breakout rooms, or you can just randomly assign them whatever you want to do and then create. Usually I do not join a breakout room myself. I let the TAs or the students be on their own so that they're by themselves. They're not having a professor kind of watching everything they do. They can just go, and then when they come back from breakout, I start quizzing them. So what about this button down here? Well, this is used to upload presentations, start polls, or even share external video. Now, I frequently use this to upload a presentation. This would be the challenge session the students are going to perform, which I usually have made in PowerPoint, saved as a PDF file, and it's important to do that because this software does not always interpret PowerPoints properly, and then I can go through the PDF slides for each challenge. So when you press the upload presentation, you get this screen, and you can literally just drag your file here and then confirm the upload, and it will bring it on. You can have multiple things uploaded at once and then activate with the green check mark which one is active. And so that's a very useful tool as well. So to give you an example of what I might do for a challenge, this is one of them. So I might present this to the students. I'll say, okay, starting from pyruvate, use enzyme substrates and other side materials to make cetoheptulose 7-phosphate, but put on a restriction of do not make glucose 6-phosphate in the process. And so then I would create my breakout rooms, assign students, and let it run for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, the students will all come back to the main room. That's forced. You give them a moment or two to reactivate their sound, which they will need to do, and then you can start quizzing them about it, guiding them through the solution, mostly asking them to provide the solution. Very, very useful tools. And so those are the ideas I wanted to offer you in case you're considering moving a course to an online format. There really is a lot that can be done, and you can really improve engagement with students. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it helps.